Ladies and gentlemen, if you would rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If everybody can find seats, I'm sure there's a few out there. And we get the rest of the crew up here on the stage. Procedures this evening are just as we've done, at least for the past 30 years that I've been doing it. I'm going to go through the warrant as it's printed. We'll address each article. We'll take a motion. We'll take a second, and then we will discuss it. Whoever makes the motion gets the first shot at talking about it. Then anybody else who wants to discuss it or ask questions, come to the microphone in the center here, and we will go through these. I will ask that comments, questions be addressed to me. We don't debate between voters or people on the stage here, so if you'll address questions and comments to me, we'll get them answered and addressed. Be polite. These are your neighbors. They may have different opinions, but that's still their opinion and they're entitled to it. So I would ask that, we've never had a problem with that here in Merrimack. I would ask it to continue. These articles are established here. They can be amended. If you have an amendment you want to put onto one of them, please do it in writing, give it to me, and then we will, again, amend it, second the amendment, and then we will discuss the amendment. Once we're done, we will vote on whether we want to amend that article. If it gets voted on positive, we'll amend it, and then we'll go back to discussing the article as amended. If it's voted down, we're back to the original article and talking about it. And once we're done with the discussion, there's no vote. It will go to the ballot as we end up, and we'll proceed on with the next one. So I'm going to ask Tom if he will introduce people on the stage here.
Okay. Do I need to hit the button or no? It's all set. So my name's Tom Koenig. I'm chairman of the town council this year. To the far right is our legal representative, Matt Upton. To his left is Finley Rothaus, a board member.
Hello.
Okay. I'm sorry, Eileen, you were hiding behind Finley. I didn't see him. So,
She doesn't look like Finley.
but between the two gentlemen is our town manager, Eileen Cabanel.
I am not Finley Rothaus.
Finley Rothaus is sitting to her left. To my right, your left of me, is Nancy Harrington. To my left, your right, is Bill Boyd, the vice chair. Just beyond, Barbara Hilly stood up and is not here at the moment. She's over there waving at the check-in table. Peter Albert is next, and then at the end of the row is Lon Woods.
And behind you.
And you want me to introduce this?
Yes, please.
So behind me, on my right, your left, is Paul McCallie, the assistant town manager, finance director. And to the left is Diane Trippett, our town clerk tax collector.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the first article is the election of officers, which will happen next month. Article 2, relative to wastewater treatment upgrades. Nancy?
I'd like to make a motion to pass Article 2.
Thank you. And second? Pete? Thank you. Nancy?
Article 2 addresses the need to approve a bond for $9.52 million for the second phase to update the wastewater treatment plant. The first phase was approved by the voters last year. Page 7 of the town meeting guide details the scope items included in this upgrade. This bond will be paid by user fees and will not impact the tax rate. I believe that even after the user fees are impacted with the bond payment, the sewer rate will remain one of the lowest in the state of New Hampshire. Kyle Fox, Director of DPW, is now going to deliver a short presentation regarding the wastewater treatment upgrades. Kyle?
We're going to bring down the screen, and we're going to do some light dimming. Go down. No, go ahead. You're okay here. You want to? You have to go down.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. It is with great pleasure that I present to you our Phase 3 upgrade of the wastewater treatment facility plant here in Merrimack. The presentation tonight will be brief. Some of it's a repeat from last year. I'm going to talk about what the wastewater treatment facility does, what our goals of the project are, what we've done since last year's approval, what we're doing now, and what the project funding is going forward. So the wastewater treatment facility takes all of the water from the town's sewer system that collects from showers, toilets, sinks, anything in your houses if they're connected to the sewer system. That water comes to our treatment facility and goes through a number of steps of treatment. The first step is preliminary treatment, where we remove the non-organic particulate matter, and that gets pulled out. We then go through a couple rounds of clarification through our primary and secondary clarifiers, and that gets rid of the solid material. And finally, it goes through a round of disinfection before going back into the river. The solids that are removed are moved back in the train, back to the north end of our property, into our biosolids handling facility, where they're turned into compost. The goals of our project, we have a number of goals. The first goal is to replace the equipment that's original to the facility. On May 5th of this year, the plant will be 50 years old. Much of the equipment we have in the plant is still original to that opening back in 1970. Our other goals are to address safety concerns, fix up some code-related deficiencies, and address the issues we have with the flushable wipes. So last year, we gave a presentation and the voters approved the first phase of this project, which was a $13.1 million bond. And that phase of the project allowed us to go forward with the complete design of the full Phase 3 project and made sure we had money for the most critical portions of the project, which are to address the main pump station at the plant, our two biggest pump stations outside of the plant, and to complete the design for the entire project. Since the approval last April, we've done a number of things. One of the biggest and most exciting pieces was we went through a process called value engineering. And this was a process where we solicited proposals for companies from around the country to come in and look at the design plans as they were at the time. And the purpose of it is it gave us a look early on for a second pair of eyes from another professional group to take a look and make sure we were going in the right direction with this project, and also to make sure the direction we were going was going to be within budget of what we're proposing. And I can honestly say the value engineering process was a complete success. They supported the design approach that our primary consultant has taken, and there's a number of the other engineering companies' recommendations that we're going to incorporate into the design. So the The final step of the current process is to complete the design of the project. Since April, again, we've been doing topographical surveys, doing some hazardous assessments of the soils, environmental permitting, and all of that is culminating to the point where we expect to have the plans at 60% design level in April of this year. And then by September of this year, we'll be at the 90% stage, and the project will be ready for bidding this fall, as early as December. And that time frame is important because it'll give contractors the opportunity to bid on the project for their next year's work. And we should get pretty good competition and hopefully some good pricing with that. So the remaining project scope, which is the topic for tonight and the bond that you're going to see on Article 2, it involves rehabilitating our headworks building, finishing up some work on our primary and secondary clarifiers, working on our sludge handling and pumping systems and sludge holding tanks, and finishing up some work at the compost facility and doing some instrumentation upgrades. So the headworks building is our main building. That's our offices, our laboratory, our locker rooms, our bathrooms. It's a space where most of the day-to-day work happens. All of our computer systems are there as well. One of the big things that we need to do in this project, as you can see in the top right picture, is 2 50-year-old diesel generators. Those generators have served us well. We're going to move them out of the building for health and safety reasons and replace them with new generators. We're going to make improvements to our ADA accessibility in the building. The picture on the left shows the stairway from the entrance to the building. You cannot access the building without going through stairs currently. We're going to make some replacement of piping systems that, again, are 50 years old. And we're going to modify and expand our laboratory space. And one of the big benefits to that side of the project is we're going to be able to take on some of the testing that's required for our MS4 stormwater program. We'll be able to do it here in town rather than sending it outside to labs. So the clarifiers. We have 3 primary clarifiers and 3 secondary clarifiers. In the Phase 2 upgrade, 2 of the primary clarifiers were rehabilitated, so we have 1 left to do. And all 3 secondary clarifiers need to be replaced. The mechanisms which spin around, and these are the places where most of the solids removal from the water happens, so they're critical pieces of infrastructure. Yep. Next up is a big safety concern for us. These are our sludge holding tanks, and this is a job that even Mike Rowe wouldn't want to do. We actually have our folks have to climb in and clean out these tanks many times each year. So what we're proposing to do is lower the level of the walls on these 2 sludge tanks and add some additional hatches into the roof of the tanks. That way we'll be able to use our Vector truck to vacuum out most of the material, and it will limit the number of times our employees have to go into that environment. The compost facility was a big part of the Phase 2 upgrade. Unfortunately, we weren't able to accomplish everything at that time. So this project will finish the work at the compost facility. In addition, we need to replace our amendment storage building. When we take the waste sludge from the process side of the facility and turn it into compost, one of the key admixtures to do that is sawdust. We buy the sawdust and we store it in this building, or we used to. This year, the building was deemed unsafe to work under anymore. So we're now storing the sawdust out in the elements. And That's a problem because to make the compost, we have to get it dry. Now the sawdust being wet takes a lot more energy to get the water back out when it rains or snows. So replacing this building is a really big, important part to our compost operation. So the funding for the entire Phase 3 project, all of the items are listed here. I won't go through them. But the bottom line number is $22.62 million, including all design and construction costs. Of that, $13.1 million was approved as the Phase 3A project last year. And this year, what's going to be on Article 2 is for the items under the Phase 3B project, which is $9.52 million. This is difficult to read, but here's what the bond schedule will look like for the Phase 3B part. The total payment is $9.52 million in principal, with $2.9 million in interest, for a total of about $12.47 million. And it's important to note, as you heard earlier, that the funding for any wastewater project comes from the user fees, not the property taxes. So this will have no impact on your property tax bill. You only get charged if you're a sewer user, and that's both residential and commercial properties. To fund the project, we're proposing a series of 4 rate increases. We did one last year of 12%. This year, no rate increase. Next year will be another 12%. 2 years later, 12%, and then 2 years after that, 5%. So the current sewer rate for residential users is $271 per year. Where that stacks up, prior to the project, this is one of my favorite graphs. This is a graph of all of the sewer systems in the state of New Hampshire. There's 85 of them. The number way to the left, $242, was where we were last year. With the 12% increase that we did last year, we're at $271. That's the bluish arrow second from the left. After all 4 rate increases, we'll be at that third arrow from the left, which you can see still puts us way to the low end of user fees for other sewer users. Skip that one. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Just don't go too far in case we've got questions. And we'll give people a chance to get back up here. This is Article 2 that we're discussing. Can I ask if there's anybody who has questions, concerns, discussion on Article 2? Of course.
One thing that I wanted to point out is that everybody should know that this bond is critical. So if this bond doesn't pass, it could very well be that something could happen where some of the equipment fails, and we end up with a really big problem. So I just encourage you very strongly to make sure that you vote yes for this, because it takes 2/3 majority vote. Thank you.
Finley?
Yes, thank you. I didn't know if Kyle might want to speak to the interest on our bond, if that's, we're going to do that later on. Paul? I didn't know if you might want to touch on the interest on the bond and how, unless it's changed, how we might be able to combine last year's with this current year for a lower rate. I didn't know if you might want to speak to that.
Currently, excuse me, the SRF grant bond interest rate is 2%. And what happens is that they look at when you make your first withdrawal of the loan payment. And currently, our $13.1 million now is locked in at 2%. And if the rates go down, we get that lower rate for this $9.5 million if it's passed. And if the rates go up, we're locked in at 2%. So we will definitely save a 2% figure for that rate of that 30-year bond on both the 13.1 and the $9.5 million.
Thank you. And please identify yourself, name and address, please.
Charles LaFawn, 7 Linden Way. I just want to say right off the bat, I rise in total support of this. I have 2 questions, though.
Okay?
And one is that you said, and I know this is probably something we should just automatically know and understand, and I don't. You said the bond payments are going to be made from the user fees.
Correct.
I think it would be very helpful if it said that in this warrant article.
Okay?
And maybe even said that it would not be coming from your property taxes.
Okay?
I highly recommend that. This is just my input. And then the other thing is that I would ask that we consider the impact or any paid-up additions to anybody that comes onto our sewer treatment plan after the construction. I'm just saying, just to possibly recover the cost. I mean, if they haven't been here all along and they want to hook up, I think there's going to be further impacts going on, and I think we should consider it. If it's $1, $10, $100, whatever it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to Article 2? Seeing none, it'll go to the ballot as printed, and remember, this needs a 2/3 majority of those voting. Article 3, relative to the operating budget. Tom, I believe this is yours.
Yes, ma'am, I move Article 3 as presented.
Thank you. Bill, we have a second? Thank you. Floor is yours, Tom.
Thank you. As you will see in your booklets, if you picked them up, starting on page 9, we have a summary of the budget information. I want to go briefly over some of it, which may just try to enhance some of the information there, but it's all there and available for you to take a look at. The Town Council is projecting a municipal tax rate of $4.50, excuse me, $4.50 for the operating budget, which is Article 3, an increase of 27 cents. And I want to highlight some of the things in this article. So increases over the 2019-20 budget, which we're in now. Health insurance went up $18,000. Workers' compensation is up $48,000. Protection against ransomware or anti-ransomware protection is $23,000. Probably very well spent if we should ever get hit with ransomware. Monitoring of the landfill is another $25,000. Our solid waste tipping fees, thanks to the great negotiations by our town manager, only go up a small amount for trash, $8,000. However, we're being hit pretty hard, as is everybody, with recycling, and we're seeing a $51,000 increase in the cost of getting rid of our recycling materials. I want to make special note that even though that price is going up, it's still much cheaper than putting it in the transfer station and throwing it away as trash. So we're still saving money by doing the recycling, just not as much as we would like to be, and we're not able to sell the recycling. We're actually having to pay to get rid of it. So we're not taking in money from it in general. There's a project to replace the sprinkler valves in Town Hall for $15,000. Compensated absences goes up $147,000 this year. It's a requirement that we set aside funds in the event that some of our employees who are capable of retiring or old enough in either the police, fire, or regular staff, that if they do decide to retire this year, we can pay their sick time and accrued vacation time and things of that nature, plus any insurance issues. We have 4 union contracts that were approved already, and their wage increases add up to $142,000. We have non-union wage increases of $98,000. And we've increased the fire overtime budget by $201,000. This allows us to be sure that we have sufficient manning even when people are unavailable to work for classes or for vacation time or whatever. We can make sure that we always have our fire stations manned to the level necessary. There are several staffing changes this year. We're talking about increasing from part-time to full-time the health officer. We're talking about adding 2 police officers for $154,000, one starting in the beginning of the fiscal year and one starting halfway through, so it's a way to try and ease them in. The MS4 that you heard mentioned by Kyle, our municipal sewer system, whatever, operating permit from the state or federal government, is onerous enough that we need to add some additional people to help manage and maintain that. So we're hiring a highway foreman at $45,000 starting January 1, so that's about a half a year, and an environmental engineer who will be able to work with Kyle's office to help manage and maintain the MS4 permit requirements. We're also looking to get a new assistant chief operator at the wastewater treatment fund. In an effort to keep the unreserved fund balance between the 4% and 8% that the council has approved, we have also added the following one-time capital projects. There's a sidewalk project for $200,000, tennis court repairs for $37,000, LED lighting upgrade to town hall for $50,000. We've added another $190,000 into the paving account so that we can try and keep up with and maintain the roads. And there's $30,000 to replace the roof on the old salt shed, which is in dire need of replacement. Otherwise, that building becomes pretty much unusable, and we need to save all the space we can. There are a couple of decreases from this year's budget. The police cruisers we're reducing by $20,000. Paving of the fire station apron reduces another $25,000, and the Natticook Lake perched beach and pond dredging comes out. That's being done this year for $95,000. So in summary, and this kind of adds up a lot of things. So the operating budget, Article 3, is $4.50. Articles 4 and 5 for the capital reserve funds adds another 52 cents. Articles 6 and 7 we haven't talked about yet. It's another 4 cents. And Article 8, yet another effectively nothing. It's small enough that it falls under the 1 penny addition. So our projected tax rate will be $5.06 versus this year's tax rate of $4.71, or about a 35-cent increase. With that, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Anyone else would like to discuss Article 3 relative to the operating budget? Seeing none? Nope. Go ahead.
Eric Ruthenberg, 34 Woodland Drive. I was hoping some of you or one person could address the fire department line item, and is there anything in there for our fire department's fleet of fire engines?
We have money in capital reserve funds for equipment for the fire department. There's approximately $600,000 in there right now. It is our intent to look into purchasing a new fire truck with that money. Sometime in the next couple of months, we get that ordered. It would be in within a year, approximately. They're working right now on the bid for it and putting it together as to the specs, and that's where we're at with the fire trucks at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions? Discussion? Comments? Seeing none, Article 3 will move to the ballot as printed. Moving to Article 4. This is relative to capital reserve funds previously established. Bill?
I move Article 4 is presented, Madam Moderator.
And Barb, that's a second? Second. Thank you. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and just very quickly to the community. As you're all aware, the capital reserve funds are what the town council uses as a mechanism to save funds so that we're able to do our capital planning and capital purchases for things that the community needs in the future, such as the fire truck that Chairman Koenig just related to. So the proposed amounts that we're seeking to deposit are consistent with what we deposited last year. As was explained last year, the state is requiring us to use the capital reserve deposits as a specific line item, a specific article, for the community to be more aware of what we are depositing into those particular funds. So that's, again, just to remind you folks, that's why it's being treated as an article. So it speaks for itself. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Moderator.
Anyone else on Article 4? Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, Article 4 will move to the ballot as printed. Moving to Article 5, relative to sewer infrastructure capital reserves. Finley?
Madam Moderator, I move Article 5 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $500,000 to be added to the Sewer Infrastructure Capital Reserve Fund previously established, with said amount to come from sewer fees and no amount to come from taxation. It's recommended by the council 700.
Thank you. And we have a second. Lon, thank you. Finley?
This article, like Article 4, is funding that used to be placed into the budget, but because of the changes that were alluded to RSA 35.5, we now have to run it as a separate warrant article. It's basically a savings account to address capital needs as they arise. So I seek your support.
Any further discussion on Article 5? Questions, comments? Seeing none, Article 5 will move to the ballot as printed. Article 6, relative to the collective bargaining agreement with the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 112.
So move Article 6 as written.
Thank you. And Pete? Thank you. Somebody going to speak to this?
I'll
Barb?
be speaking, Madam. Yes, the Town of Merrimack vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Merrimack Town Council and the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 112, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels. So for 2020 to 21, it's a 2% increase for a total of $19,465. For the year 2021 to 22, it's a 2% increase for a total of $11,779. For year 2022 to 23, that's also a 2% increase for $12,013. For the year of 2023 to 24, it's a 3% increase for a total of $18,296. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $19,465 for the current fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributed to the increases in salary and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would have been paid at the current staffing levels. The collective bargaining agreement covers the dispatchers and office staff of the police department. So these are the folks who are taking the calls and sending those cards out as soon as possible. So they are a very important part of the police department. And as such, we couldn't imagine the department working without them. Thank you.
Any further discussion, questions, comments on Article 6? Seeing none, it'll move to the ballot as printed. Article 7, the second collective bargaining agreement between the Town and Police Benevolent Association. Pete, thank you. And Barb, second, thank you. Pete, go ahead.
Yes, this is the collective bargaining agreement between the Town of Merrimack and New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 12. That union consists of our patrol officers who are out on the street handling calls, the first responders, as well as our detectives who handle our criminal investigations, and our sergeants who are the assistant supervisors of each of their squads and their units. This is a 5-year contract that will go from July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2025. The first 2 years of the contract are 2% increases. The wage and benefit cost increase for this first year is $107,000. The second year, 21-22, is 87,698, and the third year, the 2%, is 96,096. The final 2 years of the contract are 3% each, with an impact in 23 and 24 of 133,348, as well as 24-25, 164,351. These are the folks that make up the bulk of our police department and continue to do an outstanding job.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comments, or questions on Article 7? Seeing none, it'll move to the ballot as printed. Article 8 is a petitioned article. We have someone going to make a motion. That would be William Dallas. Thank you. And a second? Thank you. Bill, are you going to speak to this at all? Sorry.
He has to come up to talk.
He's coming. Be patient. My meeting.
William Dallas, 18 Hampshire Drive. I believe the article is self-explanatory. We have to do something about climate change, and this is a common sense approach. If we don't, it doesn't cost us anything right now, but if we don't address climate change, we are going to pay a larger cost in taxes with infrastructure repairs because of violent, extreme weather events, and all the other repairs to our roadways and taxes and shorelines. So, I think we need to act, and I think we need to act now. I know you folks in your place really can't affect any change at your level, but at least we can start here and direct our state and federal government to do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles?
Oh, there's two Charleses.
It's all right.
Chuck Mower, 4 Depot Street. I'd like to thank the town council for its affirmative vote in moving this petition warrant article forward for the consideration of the voters. There's so much going on. There's so many things to be done. Every day, we don't have enough hours to accomplish the things that are in front of us. That's true on an individual level, it's true on a town level, it's true on a state level, and a national level. But in fact, climate change is the existential threat to life on this planet. We've been arguing about it for a very long time, and it remains pretty clear at this point what the threat is. We all know the symptoms of it by now. We are largely a peoples that are living in Pompeii underneath Mount Vesuvius. We've absolutely got to do something to reverse climate change. We all know that the major contributor to climate change is carbon. Most economists who have studied these problems understand that carbon is the best way to approach reducing the effect on our atmosphere with pollution. We should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Nobody seems to like the word tax, and yet taxes are what give us civilization. That's why we are a civilized community, because we tax people to do the things that are civilized in our name. This is an undertaking that we must reach out and embrace. A carbon tax, as proposed by this particular article, may never see the light of day at the state or national level, but we should understand that we have a voice. We seem powerless most of the time to do anything, and yet we have a voice. We can say, yes, we want to promote a tax on carbon that will come back to each resident of New Hampshire equally. And it is the lever of the marketplace in reducing the pollution of carbon and embracing the efficiencies that are now lost in the world of stratospheric big industry and so forth. We are a little people saying, we have had enough. We know what is at stake. We know how to make the biggest effect we can to protect our future on this planet for everyone. I rise in support of the article.
Thank you. The other Charles?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Charles LaFawn, 7 Linden Way. I rise in total opposition to this. I don't think the town should support this, and I personally will make sure that my senators, my congressmen, and my president won't support this either. This is a redistribution tax. This is going to be punitive. It's going to be punitive to people like me who are on retirement. This will really, really hurt. This is going to jack up my gas prices, my electric prices. If you think for 1 minute that the government's going to redistribute this money in a fair manner.
Charles?
I'm sorry, Madam
Thank you.
Moderator? There's no way. I've never seen the government efficiently redistribute any money. There's always massive amounts of loss. I don't mean to state that the government is not good. I do not mean to state anything to that nature. I mean to state that this tax is evil. It will come back and it will hurt us. We are finally energy independent in this nation. This tax will make sure it cripples us. We are finally starting to see some traction on manufacturing in this country. We have reduced energy costs. We should be seeing reduced electric costs. We should be growing and thriving. This tax will kill that. I promise you. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you, everyone.
Anyone else would like to speak to Article 8? Pat?
Pat Heinrich, 8 Edgewood Ave. I apologize, Madam Moderator, but in my other life, I'm a clerk of the school district, and all articles are supposed to be turned into questions when they go on the ballot, and I'm just wondering how this is going to be turned into what question?
We'll figure it out. Anyone else? Come on up to the mic.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Ben Niles, 11 Fernwood Drive. I used to think that climate change was a hoax, and being retired, I'm able to read a lot from various websites, and it's clear that something's happening. The Arctic is suffering from ice melt, the Antarctic is, etc. The oceans are warming, the fishes are moving further north for cold water, etc. Now, my concern is we need to do it right. We need to do it with proper research and study. We should not rush to judgment. And let me make some of my comments in the form of questions. Okay, the article states that it rebates the money collected to all residents on an equal basis. Yet when you go to the Climate Change Lobby website, they have a document there that kind of like is their plan. And why is it that the document says 53% of US households will profit from the dividend, and basically, I'm paraphrasing, basically 47% of US households will lose, get less back than what it cost them, which is what the other gentleman was saying, is that it's income redistribution. The article is failing to disclose this. And businesses pay no tax. I'm sorry, they pay the tax, but they get no dividend. Well, guess who's going to absorb the cost of the tax? Us, the consumers. That's going to be an increase to our cost of living. And it's further incomplete because as it talks about the carbon tax, and it says, oh, $10 or $15 per year. Well, there's that at the state level and that at the federal level. It really isn't clear how many years it's going to occur, okay? And yet, when you go to their website of the Climate Change Lobby, it's clear that their stated goal is to reduce carbon emissions by 20 to 40% in the next 10 years and 90 to 100% by 2050. That is, that's like figuring out how to land a man on the Mars 10 different times. That's such a huge undertaking on it. And you sit and wonder, okay, so if it's going to cost 7% of the households more than it could get back, exactly how much is it going to cost me? Nowhere in the document, tell me what it's going to cost for my heat, my electricity, etc., my gasoline for my car, if I can still buy a gasoline car. What's it going to cost me? Nowhere is that information. And yet, when I look at a study completed by the Competitive Enterprise Institute, they're projecting that the average household burden in New Hampshire is $161,563. In year one, it's $74,432. Years 2 through 5, $47,310. In years 6 and beyond, every year, $39,821. That translates to our energy costs are going to go through the roof and be out of control.
Ben, I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
Pardon?
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please.
Okay, I think we should be doing research first and study and develop ways to have alternate energy solutions like hydrogen fuel for vehicles where the only emission is water for your lawns, and carbon sequestering technology to remove carbon from the air. So as I look at it, I think that this article is on the surface a bit misleading and totally incomplete of the information on the facts to enable us to make an informed decision. And I'd like to propose an amendment to the article for the reasons I've stated earlier. Do I do it now, Madam Moderator?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to have it read as, to enact carbon pricing legislation to study how to protect New Hampshire from the costs and environmental risks of combined climate change.
Ben, have you got that written?
Pardon?
Is that written down?
Kind of.
Can you share with me so that I can
All
make
right,
sure?
and then in
everybody-
the second paragraph, to lead to this critical study for the health and well-being. Strike out moment and put study.
So critical moment becomes critical study? Yes. And then the first one? This would be on the legislation. The second line
Yes.
reads carbon pricing legislation to protect.
No,
And
to
we-
study how to
Ben,
protect.
my floor right now.
All right.
We want to add pricing legislation to study how best to protect. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody understands what we're talking about is we're going to, proposing to change this article. Do you need me to repeat the changes? Okay. The first line, the first sentence will read, "We, the town of Merrimack, hereby call upon our state and federal elected representatives to enact carbon pricing legislation to study how to best protect New Hampshire from the costs and environmental risks." Okay? Yes. Do we have a second? Yes, we do. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Right, right. And then on the second paragraph, to lead in this critical moment is going to become to lead in this critical study. Okay? Any discussion on these changes? Seeing, if you want to discuss it, come to the microphone, please.
Deborah Leach, 6 Linda Lane. I was just a little confused. Are we saying that we're going to enact carbon pricing legislation and study? Or are we going to say we're just going to study it?
It depends on how you read it. What we're doing is we're proposing that there is a change to this article that says, shall the town of Merrimack hereby call upon our state and federal elected representatives to enact carbon pricing legislation. Oh, I see what the confusion is.
See, to me, it's got to be either or.
Yep.
Right? We're either going to say we're going to go for carbon pricing, or we're going to say we're going to study it. So
Yep.
I just want to clarify that.
Yep, that's all right. No, good point. Ben, if I can make a suggestion here?
Yeah, my intent is not either or, it's to change it to read to enact legislation to study how to protect. So maybe I didn't cross off enough words there.
If we change the word enact to study,
Yeah.
it has the same effect and would create less confusion.
Okay.
So that it would read, state and federal elected representatives to study carbon pricing legislation. Is that what that was your intention, Ben? And okay with the second? Okay, so a little bit easier to read here. So instead of enact, it is to study. And the other one is in this critical study instead of moment. Anyone else with questions on this change only? Seeing none others, you've all got a blue card. We're going to ask you if you want to change this article with those two words to make it study rather than act and moment. All those in favor of this change, raise your blue card. Okay? All those opposed to the change? Okay, the amendment passes. So we have amended this article. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the amended article? Any further questions? Ben?
Madam Moderator, I did not pull these thoughts and these numbers out of my hat. So I'd like to share with everyone where I got my information. The Citizens Climate Lobby, if you go to their website, it has a document on financial impact on households, on carbon fee, and dividend. That's where I got the information on what they have or what they're disclosing, and what they're totally silent on. Then there's another organization called the Competitive Enterprise Institute. And they're the ones that did the study which gave me the financial impact on a carbon tax and eliminating carbon to New Hampshire households. And that's a 20, 30-page document. So I didn't just make these numbers up. These came from very authoritative research organizations. And I would expect if it's studied at a state and federal level, they would start with something like this, but they would have both sides of the issue presenting their information, which then you sort through. But it's facts, it's numbers, it's real. That's what we need.
Thank you, Ben.
So that's where my information came from.
Mr. Barry, Representative Barry.
Good evening, Madam Moderator. Thank you. For the record, I'm Richard Barry. I happen to be a state rep. I'm going to make a wild assumption here and say you folks have looked at the numbers and studied the data, and you agree with the next couple of sentences on this that says, to protect households, we support this carbon fee and dividend approach? Did you all take that and look it up and figure out what that really means?
Dick, we discussed this quite extensively at the town council meeting. Because it is a petitioned warrant article, the only question before the council was whether it would be put on the ballot. It's not up to us to make a decision on the accuracy or the validity of the information in the article. There was a very split vote on whether this should go forward, partially for the reasons that you're enunciating right now. But no, we haven't taken and studied to try and understand the specifics of this. We were assured that the people that were bringing it forward planned to make an educational push to get people to understand it. But I will tell you that personally, I don't understand it, and I think it's going to be a long haul before we do understand it enough to be able to make a decision. With the change that's been voted on tonight, I think it gives us another year to study it, to understand, and we'll probably come back again next year with more clarification to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. A comment. 2 years ago, we had the group of people come up to talk to us about this exact program. They didn't have the numbers here before you, but we looked at the data, the information, what they were saying, and we rejected it. It came in the form of a bill, and we rejected it. Part of the reason was we don't know the numbers. What percent is the government going to take when it goes through the process? What's going to happen to any product that is made from electricity? I mean, because oil and the carbon sources are producing electricity, so anything that you make from that, you're going to be paying more for, and we haven't figured out, they never figured out what the next piece was going to be. Also, I have a basic flaw, I guess. I look at the weather reporters and try to figure out how accurate they are predicting the weather for tomorrow. And we're trying to predict 20 years out. I'm sorry, we don't even have a measurement for what the weather, what a weather report is good or not. If they say it's going to be 70 degrees tomorrow, do we know if it's good at 72 or 68 in that range? What is it? There's no number. There's no follow-up on it. So we can't go through and say we would like to spend the money on something that we're not sure we're going to get the payback. My suggestion is can it. Thank you.
Thank you. Janine?
For the record, I'm Janine Nodder, 19 Whittier Road. I'm also a state rep, and I'm on the Committee of Science, Technology, and Energy. And if we're voting on to put whether or not to put this on the ballot tonight, I'm here to tell you it's not needed. This bill comes up.
Clarification. This is going on the ballot.
Oh, I see. Well, it comes up every year. Dick Berry was our chairman last term. This term, we have someone else that's our chairman. Same bill, carbon pricing, and it passed party lines in committee. And on the House floor, they tabled it because nobody wanted to face the music having their name to this. The cost for this is astronomical, and it's going to affect everything in our life. So I hope it gets voted down. Thank you.
It is going on the ballot as printed. Charles?
Charles LaFont, 7 Linden Way. I'm still very opposed to this. When the other gentleman spoke and he gave the numbers of 47 and 53 for the percentage of people that would be affected and the people not, I'll say I rise in support of his statement, and that basically that's about the percentage of people who pay income taxes and make money. And the other people are the people that have a hard time. So maybe it'll help the people that have a hard time. But I still am opposed to this. I do not want to see this. I don't think it'll help. I was in the Philippines just recently for my son's wedding. And while we were there, I understand that the volcano that blew 30 miles south of Manila threw more carbon pollution into the air than all of the world creates in 5 years. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else with comments? Seeing none, Article 8 will move to the ballot as amended. Pat?
Get up, Madam Moderator?
Yes.
May I have a point of order?
Yes.
I don't know how many of you are aware, but I want to make a point. We lost several very important citizens of the town of Merrimack this past year, and 2 of them very recently. And I would like to ask for a moment of silence for Stan Heinrich and for Pete Gagnon, both of whom passed away in the past week or so. So if you could just bear with us for a few moments, please. Thank you very much. Stan and Pete both had tremendous impacts in our town over the many years, and we will miss them greatly. We appreciate the tributes that have been made for Stan over at the school district session last week, and it was sad to hear that Pete Gagnon had passed away. He served on our planning board and many other aspects of town for many, many years, and we lost a great deal of knowledge in those 2 gentlemen passing, so thank you very much.
Seeing no other business to come before this board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Good night, folks.